Okay, we'll get started. Thank you for joining us, everybody. Your time is very important to us, so I don't want to sit here and wait too long for people to join us. This is part 2 of our webinar series. I thank you all for joining us. Some of you, or maybe most of you, joined us for the first one. And actually, I have a poll question for everybody before we get started. So if you could all choose, this gives me a sense of where we're at, how many people were lucky enough to sit in the first one, and if I had to reference many things from that or not. Okay. Most of you have voted. And share results. Okay, so most of you did attend the first one, and a handful of you did not. So I do want to make the announcement that the first one in its entirety is available on our website, micatholic.org. Go to the risk management page, and it's right there. And there's also a link to the actual PowerPoint presentation with all the slides. So you'll see the whole video that I go through the slides, and also the PowerPoint that you'll be seeing here as well. So this one will also be posted most likely tomorrow. So you can show it to other people. You can watch it again. So if you missed the first one, looks like about 9 of you, you could go back and view it. Okay, so welcome everybody. This is part 2. Again, what we're going to cover is for part 1, we talked about the protected loss fund program, the structure of it, what it's about, what it means, and all the programs that we provide. This is part 2, where we go through claims review. We identify some risks that we can experience at all of our sites, and lessons from the field. And then part 3, which is next Wednesday at 10 o'clock, we are going to discuss some emerging issues, special events, issues, things like that. That is kind of a hot topic now because of all the cancellations. I don't want to get into that right now. And then on some online resources. So today's part 2. As you may remember, the last point I made in part 1, most of you remember, the last point I made was the actuarial and the excess underwriters reviews are heavily weighted by loss history. Okay, so that means all the buildings and vehicles and employees and students and all those things that I talked about, all those things are very important because those are our exposures. That's what our underwriters look at. But then there's an actuarial review as well as an excess underwriter review of our loss history. Okay, so we may have $7 billion in buildings. That's fine, but how are we taking care of those buildings? That's what's important. That's what can drastically change the price of insurance. And that's why today we are going through a review of our 5-year claims history. Now this is province wide, right? Which is all the 7 dioceses in the state of Michigan are considered to be part of the ecclesiastical province of Detroit. So it's a fun word to say, but we are all part of that. So this claim history is the entire state, essentially. And we are going to look at the top 10 losses in each category, and we're going to see the frequency and severity. So frequency is obviously number of claims, severity is how much those claims cost to us. And then we're going to look at it by coverage, we're going to look at it by source of the loss, and we're going to look at it nature of the loss, and then very important, we're going to see what claims are considered preventable versus non-preventable. So this is coverage frequency, so number of claims. So this is years. So RB, I put codes in here so it fits on the graph better, but RB is all risk buildings. So essentially property, right? As you can imagine, most of the claims that we have are property claims. So it's about almost 1,500 claims in the last again, these are the last 5 years. Work comp, that's a big one. We'll probably have a drop off with that this year because a lot less people are working in the office and around the facilities. GB is your general liability. RC is your all risk contents, right? So you have a fire loss or flood loss. I know which is a sensitive topic right now for a lot of folks. And you don't just get it, you don't always get a property damage, but you get damage to all the contents as well. So that's what RC is. So if you notice all these different things, the one I want to show you is EP, which is the third from the right. That's your employment practices liability. There's only 26 claims in the last 5 years, but if you go to the next slide, which is your severity, right, which is your amount of claims. Again, your building's going to be up there, $20 million in the last 5 years, $4 million a year. That's significant. But EP, you see, also third from the right is $500,000, 552,000 to be exact, and that's an area that we need to really look at. And employment practices is your wrongful terminations, things like that. That's why we encourage you to really call your diocesan attorneys before you think about terminating an employee or not renewing a contract, etc. So again, we're looking at 5-year history. Property is a big one. FF is your fidelity. That's also big, $6 million in the last 5 years. And that one big claim makes that up, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, but that's an area that's very important because every diocese has an anonymous phone number on their website if you suspect employment, an employee embezzlement or something like that. So we encourage you to make that call if you suspect anything, because that's a big number. We can control that. And again, underwriters look at this, actuaries look at this, and they see that's why the property rates and the work comp rates and liability rates are adjusted every year because of the loss history. So by source of a claim is, where did that claim come from? Sort of like the cause. The one big one here, this is alphabetical, so it's not really as, biggest to, most to least here, but you can see the number. The most is the rain and the windstorm. We had some big losses a few years ago on the windstorm and rain. We always have issues with that. But a big one here is alleged improper maintenance. So that is an area that we can control. Excuse me. So the insurance companies see that alleged improper maintenance. So that means that allegedly we aren't maintaining our facilities. So again, this is good to see this. So that means we have a lot of claims that are in that category. And as far as the severity of those, this is in order of most to least. Okay, that we have a lot of claims, but you can say they're smaller in nature, but still they're in the top 10 that allege improper maintenance. Employee dishonesty, that is the embezzlement issue that I mentioned, and the majority of that is one big claim in the last 5 years, but it is in the top 10, so it's worth talking about, and we discussed that a little bit later today. And then your rain and windstorm, those are going to be big losses just because of what they are, right? I mean, that usually, dry, if you get rain, you got roof damage, drywall damage, et cetera, et cetera. And then nature of loss. So what kind of loss are we talking about? Interior structural damage. That kind of ties in with your rain and your windstorm, flooding, things like that. That just, that causes damage to your interior structural damage. Strain, contusion, those are your work comp issues. You got contents over here, an exterior property. We got damage there too. And some of these things you can't, there's not much you can do about it. But it again, we like to show you where you should be focusing. Like rain, not a problem if all your grounds around the building are they drain correctly. They drain away from the building, and your roofs are in good shape, and your eaves and all those are cleared out. Things like that. That's all maintenance related issues that if a big rain comes, shouldn't affect you too badly. But if you don't maintain these things, then the rain causes flooding, etc., and then you have more damage. Strain and contusions. Work comp issues, those are maintaining your facilities. Is there any slip trip hazards, things like that? So again, we need to look at our surroundings and see where we can focus our attention on. Low severity. So interior structural, $11 million. Again, that could be a couple big losses in there. Our fire, you get a fire that causes a couple $1 million of damage. Well, then there's smoke cleanup and all that, all those related costs. And part of the altar burns down. It's a special kind of wood, and since we're on replacement cost on our insurance, we replace things with like kind and quality. So the altar was an expensive altar. Now we replace it. That money, that amount is included in these claim dollars. Money and securities, again, that's part of that embezzlement issue. And then combine exterior, interior. Of course, you got some of that exterior structural. Those are going to be larger in nature because of the damages that's usually done to outside of the buildings. And contents, only $1 million. But again, this is the top 10 of all other natures of loss. So the other thing that we've done that Gallagher Bassett does for us, they track claims on what they think is preventable versus non-preventable. So in that 5 year, we had 3,558 claims, 35 million total incurred. Out of those, 220 claims, so not many, that's 6% of the total claims were considered preventable. But almost 7 million of that 35 million, so close to 20%, was preventable. Now again, the majority of that 6.8 million was an embezzlement. One big claim comes to mind, and a couple other ones, and those claims are preventable by having accounting practices, and we will talk about that later. We even have a video that I won't show you today, but I will mention it and show you where it's in that video talking about accounting practices, how important it is to have different people check the books, check the check registers, write the checks, sign the checks, etc. So again, 20% of those total incurred over 5 years are preventable. And so when the underwriter looks at that and says, well, this is an area that we could have done better, we here at MCC then try to tell our parish folks, you guys, we need to tighten this up over here, etc. So when we do our loss prevention visits, for instance, we ask you several questions. It's about separation of duties, having different people do different things with the finances, mainly because we don't want to put undue pressure on one person or put you in a position of suspicion or anything like that. And a lot of times by doing that will prevent embezzlement and things like that. So the important thing about claims is how and when to submit a claim. Okay, Gallagher Bassett Services, they've been a partner for I want to say 45 years at this point. If you have a property, general liability, a clergy auto, and a parish auto claim, you call that first number, 866-850-1933. You can actually call that number for anything claim related. And if it is work comp, they will refer you to the East Lansing office. But if it is work comp, it's work comp. Obviously, an employee gets injured. You can call the 800-926-1819. And we also have a link on our website, a work comp form with a fax number. You can fill that out, send that in that way too. As far as when, as soon as possible, within 24 hours of the incident, if you can. And then, there are cases where something is just an incident, doesn't turn into a claim. We don't want you to sit there and figure out, okay, is this going to be a claim? Is it just an incident? No, that's Gallagher Bassett's job. You let them know. They'll put it in the system as an incident. And if that turns into a claim, then they will elevate it to claim status. So someone slips at church, someone falls on your sidewalk, trips, whatever, injures their knee, and they say, "Don't worry about it. I'm fine." You should let the Gallagher Bassett know because they can go home, and then months later, they come to you and say, "Hey, I really hurt my knee. I had multiple surgeries, etc." And if you didn't let Gallagher Bassett know, they have no idea now. They have no information on it, and you got to start from scratch. So it's very important. Now, the next slide shows you the significance of early reporting. Okay, so right here we got 5 different coverages broken into 2 different categories. The brown, if you can see the brown, it's claims within 5 days. So claims reported to Gallagher Bassett within 5 days is the brown. Claims reported after 5 days is in the red. Now, auto, as you can see, you wait past 5 days and there's a lot more expenses involved because now there's less information. They don't go to the right repair shop, etc. General liability is a big one too. It's like 3 times as much. Just like that person that fell, hurt their knee. If you let Gallagher Bassett right away, they can have an initial file set up. They can have witness list, some witnesses listed, etc. They can get to that claim, settle that claim quickly. The property is a little different because you're going to report that right away. Typically, same with crime. Okay, so these are kind of backwards, but the point is work comp and general liability are the big ones. Work comp, employee gets hurt. They don't want to say anything. They don't want to burden the parish, so they go, "I'm fine." And then months and months later, they can't use their shoulder. Their shoulders, it's an whatever. whatever. Now they got to go to the doctor and get more surgeries. If you report that right away, Gallagher Bassett gets on it, sends that employee to a independent medical examiner, and make sure if surgery is needed, et cetera, et cetera. So it's very important to report incidences to Gallagher Bassett right away within this 5-day threshold, because then they'll have all the information they need from the get-go, and they can settle that claim a lot faster before it may turn into more, possibly a lawsuit down the line. So this brings to our second polling question. How soon should you report a claim to Gallagher Bassett? I was hoping to make this question rather easy. Okay, let's share that. Pretty much everyone's had the right answer, so that's good. As soon as possible, no more than 5 days, if possible. If something happens over the weekend and you get to the office Monday, Tuesday, you don't know about it, I understand that. But you should have a protocol. Maybe put a message on the somewhere. If there's an event over the weekend, have them have a number to call to report things to you that you can get it in. So you can't always get it in within 5 days, but you see the importance of doing that, which is right here. You get almost 3 times, the claim becomes 3 times more costly if we don't report right away. So this is probably the most important slide of today. And again, this slide along with this whole presentation will be available on our website, hopefully tomorrow, if not um, by the end of the week. Okay, so now identifying risk. You should be able to identify risks that exist around you. Each member of the staff should contribute to the overall loss prevention. That is your maintenance, your director of religious ed, your pastor, priest, etc., bookkeepers. You get the idea. Common everyday risks abound, right? And what's very important is if you have leased premises, it is still your duty to maintain reasonable control over your property. Make sure you conduct periodic inspections to make sure the lessee is complying with the minimum safety and security standards. So a lot of our school buildings that we don't use, but we lease them to a Head Start or a charter school, things like that. They lease it, great, but you own the building. And so you need to make sure they are complying with minimum safety guidelines. And depends on the lease, which you need to discuss with your diocesan attorneys. Depending on the lease, you may still be responsible for the property around the building, sidewalks, things like that. And if you are, you need to maintain that because as a property owner, you're liable. It all depends on the lease language. Okay, so this is a series of pictures that I'm gonna go through real quick. These are examples of things that exist at your facilities, may or may not, that you need to identify. Sorry, I took a drink of water. Okay, so this here, as you can see, it's missing a handrail, right? I mean, you can see where the old bracket was, rusted off. A lot of you that have attended our seminars before, you probably have seen these pictures several times, but they're great pictures because they're kind of general and they show good examples of things that exist, risks that exist around us. Okay, an old fan. This fan is no longer in compliance. The gap between the guarding is way too big. Easily put your finger in there. So you don't necessarily need to get rid of the fan. You could put, a lot of people put like, not chicken wire necessarily, but like a wire mesh around the fan that has smaller gaps. So that's acceptable. But this as it is not acceptable. Okay, here we have a aquarium, water source, and we have all these plugs right here. So for this, we would require a GFCI, a ground fault circuit interrupter plug, because that usually trips quickly before anything bad happens electronically. Okay, so electrically. So here we would recommend a GFCI, which is a very common recommendation that we get into a little bit later. Here, probably looks like a preschool room. You've got some things stacked on the stairs here. You need to have a clear path of egress to the exit door. And other people have mentioned in the past that this bookshelf is right next to this register. Not, I assume this is a working radiator. If not, then this bookcase is probably fine, but you got to make sure that's not resting against that. Okay, chain doors, not good if you have an emergency situation and outside these doors or the other side of these doors is an emergency exit. Okay, you can't have these chained. You've got a place with a bunch of trophies. None of these were bolted down or inside the case. These might have been. I don't know if there's glass in front of that or not. Doesn't look like it. But these can all come toppling over. Hit a kid in anywhere, right? So these all need to be either anchored down or inside display cases. Okay, here. What if you got to turn off the circuit really quick? You don't have the key, you're in trouble. So this cannot be locked. Now I understand this might have been like a high school or a school, and the kids kept opening it and turning things on. Okay, that's a different issue. The only time this is allowed is if you have an electrician on site and it's a lockout tagout procedure. So they're locking it purposely so you don't turn a circuit back on that they're working on. That wouldn't be good for the electrician. But typically, we don't want, we can't have these locked because you need access to these rather quickly. Hopefully you don't, but sometimes you might. Fire extinguisher. One side of these will show you if it's been inspected, when and where. This side is 12 little spots there that has date and who it was inspected by. Once a month, at least once every month, you should just go make sure the needle's on green and then just date it and put your initial on there. Take responsibility for these. You don't want to grab a fire extinguisher that has lost pressure over time within the year of the inspecting company inspected it. Okay, this is actually a great example. These aren't all bad, these pictures. This is a fire exit, third grade. It has a written directions of where to go, but it also has labels the room that you're in, where to go, out, over, down, and out. So this is really good. This is part of emergency plans that we talk about a lot. You're required to have, whether you're a school or just a parish with no school, you should have an emergency plan written out and looked at every few years in case you have to renew in case you have to change anything around. If there was an interior uh, renovation or something that changed the hall, things like that, you got to stay on your emergency plans. It's very important. Okay, here you have a school kitchen, you've got some chemicals, grill cleaner, etc. And then here you have taco seasoning. This looks like, I don't know what that is, bacon, who knows what that is. But point is, you got food and chemicals right next to each other in the same area. That's a no-no. These chemicals should be entirely removed from the room and stored in the proper case, or at the very least, stored in a proper, closet or something in this room. Okay, here, you're all sitting here hopefully thinking, okay, how are they going to get access to these panels? Exactly. Okay, these chairs, tables, etc., are in the way. You cannot get to these access panels if you have to turn those off. We make this recommendation a lot, and every time we go to places, the maintenance folks, a lot of them sing the same tune of, I've told so and so to not store things in here, and they keep storing things in here because there's a lack of storage space. We understand that. A lot of people put red tape because you need 6 feet in front. Sorry, 3 feet, 36 inches in front of the access panel and then a pathway to it. So some people put tape, but whatever you can do, you can't let this happen. Similarly, you can't really get to these access panels. You get a wheelbarrow here, and also this might have been like a boiler room, and you got all these paints and chemicals stored in the boiler room, which is also not good. You need to store those possibly off-site, off that building in a a shed or a storage building away from the main structure, and in the proper storage container. All right, this is a double door here. This door opens. This door is probably bolted top bottom, but someone might not know that. Unbolt it, open the door. This ladder all of a sudden comes falling, possibly hits the light, hits whoever's standing here. So this ladder needs to be moved over. You could put an eye bolt on either side and bungee it, but essentially ladders need to be secured or shelved. If you have rack, you got to secure it to the wall either on a rack or just figure out a way to anchor it and secure it. So we have, again, chemicals. You got paints, stains, charcoal fluid, etc. And this is just an old metal container, not a fireproof container. So chemicals, flammable chemicals need to be stored in the appropriate containers, which are usually red or orange, with a big flame on it because it marks that there's flammable materials in there. Okay, nice church. This is the middle of the day, beautiful window. You got exit signs, but let's say it's Saturday Vigil Mass during the winter, right? 5, 6 o'clock, it's dark out, and now you have no lighting to get out. People that are visiting don't know where to go, so we recommend putting emergency lights where these signs are as well, or just install battery operated lights to mark the exits and entrances. Most importantly, the exit so people can see. So emergency lighting is not the most attractive accent in the church, but we're talking about life safety here, and that's very important. Tables stacked, those can easily fall on somebody. We like to have those either anchored, it's similar to the ladder. You can anchor these to the wall so they don't fall, or just stack them flat. So it's very important because they could easily slide, fall on someone's foot, etc. A is a very tall shelving unit. This needs to be anchored either to the wall, to the floor, to another one, to provide more stability. But you get a little kid trying to reach up, get a puzzle or something, and that whole thing comes toppling over. We don't want that. Okay, this was clearly a preschool room or kindergarten room, and I'm assuming that by the location of the whiteboard, probably about 6 to 8 inches off the ground there. And so this outlet, completely unprotected, need to put in the little plastic plugs. There's new plugs now that have a little plastic inside them that's very difficult for a small child to put something into. Those are new, so you could do those. Just put little plastic plugs in there that you need a lot of because those have a tendency to get lost. So this is a means of egress, right? Stairs. Someone decided to put some tables here, a ladder here. That looks like an invitation to put more things there, and all of a sudden you have an abundance of things here, again, because there's a lack of storage space elsewhere, and now it becomes an issue for people trying to get out of the basement. So this can't happen. This is an invitation for more things, and it's also, they can also fall similar to the other one on folks walking by or trying to move something or whatever. So these need to be put someplace else away and out of the way of an egress. Again, you got some nice candles here, votive candles, matches, etc. But we've got carpeting underneath. So a lot of the a recommendation we make a lot is to put hard plastic. I think we say Lexan, which I believe is I don't know if it's a brand or just a type of plastic, like a hard plastic, similar to what office chairs are on, right? And they're flame retardant. You should put that underneath that or redo this whole area and put in tile or something like that because these candles can break, fall, burn the carpet, burn this, right? This is, I believe this was wooden. And smoke damage is usually more damage to repair than actual fire. So you can also get the little battery operated ones where you make the donation and click the button and they flicker and all that. You can do that too. A lot of parishes have done that. Okay, this is a if you don't recognize this is an old TV, but that's not the issue here. It was on a cart on wheels and it had no strap on it, right? So again, you could have one of these in one of your rooms, walk by it every day. That's why we recommend having multiple people or a team of people that go around your facility once a month, twice a year at the very least, and they may recognize this stuff because you may be going by it every day and not even realize that it's an issue. Again, this is actually a good thing. Certificate of boiler inspection. It's good that it's posted, but it's not posted in a flame resistant, fire resistant case. So either a picture frame we see a lot of. We've seen an old glass peanut butter jar or mayonnaise jar. They screw the lid to the wall. They can just fold that boiler inspection, curl it kind of in the bottle, and you just screw the bottle to the top. And it's posted because it has to be posted in a clear container or a frame, etc., so the boiler person can see it. So this is halfway there. Okay, we got open. This is a garage off. I can't remember if it was a rectory or just off the parish. We had open containers, right? I mean, there's no plastic tops on these things. That's what happens with these. They break over time, and so there's fumes. Fumes are what's flammable. What we say a lot is we can have a bucket, a pail of gasoline, light a match. If you're quick enough, you can put that match right in that gas and it'll go out. The liquid will go out. It's the fumes that catch from fire. So either the nice metal fuel containers that have that automatic close, or just make sure you are better with closing these because this is a hazard, obviously. Old choir loft, a lot of our churches have them. The requirement is 42 inches, and so this one I think was maybe 38, 36. So you don't have to redo the whole thing. You can just put extend it up, and maybe a pipe or something along the top to extend this 42 inches to make it safe for people that go up there. Couple issues with this. We got a cord under the closet. So this may be a pinching point here that pinches the cord, and there happen to be a copier in here. So, copier gets warm, things like that. Again, you may not think anything of it. So either totally remove those doors, and you got to look at the unsightly copier, I guess. But there's a couple issues with that. Okay, I don't think any of our schools or you know religious education areas have this anymore because these are very unsafe. Supposed to get rid of these, but it also shows you a type of material that that you can use. Okay, this is mulch. Depending on the type of material, depending on the equipment, you need certain distance. Okay, this looks like it's about 6 feet maybe. You need certain distance, like a swing set or something. You need certain distance from that and the right amount of cushion material. And depending on what you use a different depth. So mulch might be 4 inches of depth. Rubber tire may be 3 inches of depth because it's more cushion, right? There's a handbook from our website. You just go to Consumer Product Safety Commission handbook on playgrounds. Tells you all that, what materials to use, etc. So different playground swing set I mentioned. There's an S hook here. Okay, kid gets swinging. That could potentially this link here could potentially come right out of the S hook, and that kid could go flying. So again, you could have a grounds committee that walks around, looks at these things. We have self-inspection forms that you can use, playground inspection, that they can check this periodically because you may not be able to get to this all the time. You have someone else, a team, like we said, to maybe go around and document and then fix that. Either get a brand new one or just try to bend that in so the link can't come out. Set of bleachers in disrepair. Okay, you need to repair that. If you can't get to it right away, try to rope it off. Tell people not to use it, and if they'd still use it, that's kind of their own thing. You wouldn't be liable necessarily for that, but you ought to fix this right away. And then finally, we affectionately call this one the stairway to heaven. You've got a press box, big old door that you got to swing open, and these handrails stop right here, right here, right here. So this is all open. So going up may not be the problem, but coming down, misstep. So you either gotta, you obviously gotta finish the protection here on both sides because this can't happen. Okay, lessons from the field. So these are the things that we've noticed during our loss prevention visits. We're talking about the most frequently used recommendations, repeat offenders, how the underwriters use the data, and a major topic of concern is that fraud prevention, the embezzlement issue, which is a huge area of an area that we can prevent if we tighten our practices, our accounting practices down. So what I'm saying here is we keep track of parishes that we go to that have the same recommendation from year in and year out, right? We see every parish about every 3 to 4 years. And if we see the same recommendations all the time, the underwriters have access to that. And if they see that too, well, then that affects premiums and things like that. So it's very important that when we make recommendations that you address them. So this doesn't mean a lot, but it shows you that we did the same time frame of the claims that I showed you, June 1st, 2015 to May 31st, 2020. If I didn't mention that for the claims, I apologize. It is the same time frame, and these are the top 20 recommendations that we make. And here they are. The little asterisk means that we saw a picture, right? That I mentioned. So the number one recommendation we make are areas that don't have ground fault circuit interrupter outlets. So, outlets near drinking fountains, outlets in the bathrooms. Again, it wasn't code when a lot of our buildings were built, right? So any renovations that you do now, they are required. And because they're required, we like to be safer than sorry. And we say, within 6 feet of a water source, you need to have a GFCI. So bathrooms, kitchens, etc. So concrete repair, extension cords, power strips, meaning we go around to our sites, it looks like they're using that extension cord for more than what it's meant to be used for, which is a temporary use of power. But we see extension cords wrapped up above, ceiling joists, and then come down. They plug into a light. They're obviously not using that temporarily, so that's important. I've mentioned fire extinguisher service. A lot of people forget. The inspectors might forget To inspect one or two, so it's important to use like a site diagram and label all your fire extinguishers so that company can make sure they get to all of them. Content inventory. That's essentially taking digital photos or a video of all your contents. If you have a fire or a major loss, it's easier to replace those things if you have a record of them, a picture or a video of them, and that helps Gallagher Bassett get you the light count and quality. Electrical panel access, we showed you pictures on that. Outside person's liability, that's anybody stepping foot on your premises to conduct business, whether it's a furnace repair person, a you're getting, kitchen redone, construction people, they need to provide you with liability insurance, naming parish, school, and diocese as additional insured. And the archdiocese, you got to include also Mooney Holdings LLC, something like that. So there's actually 4 things they have to list. Self-inspections. Okay, we have a form on our website. Makes it easy. It's like 20-some pages. You can section it off, and it includes playground inspection, includes ladder inspections. I did fail to mention earlier that we did disable the little hand raising functionality for the webinar for your participants because we wanted to get through this, and any questions that you have, you can ask me later after this. I provide you my email and phone number in the last slide. So again, self-inspections, we have a form out on the website. Fire extinguisher training. It's very important to have all your staff or most of your staff that are there every day to know the basics of using a fire extinguisher. Fire departments are very happy and willing to come show you. Doesn't take long. They use an old fire extinguisher. They might even put a fire in like a barrel and have everyone practice. Michigan Right to Know Law, operation identification. Okay, that's your computer's printer, anything expensive that can be stolen. Nice to put like an ID badge on there or an indelible pen to put, property of. That way it's easier to track down if it's stolen. Carpet rugs, okay. Carpets lifted, rugs are torn, it's a tripping hazard. Emergency operation plan I mentioned, that's your fire exits, what to do when, tornado, severe wet weather, etc. We looked at a couple pictures showed access to doors, emergency lighting repair. I don't know if we actually had one. We had more than emergency lighting install. Accounting duties I put in red because that's the big area that we need to improve on because we've had big claims. I talk about that in a minute. Electrical outlet adapter. So that means someone's plugging in a 3-way or a 6-way or a or power strip of something and got a bunch of things plugged into it. A lot of times it's during the holidays. And we see that a lot. Speaking of holiday, we do have a video next week. I talk about online resources, talk about a lot of the training modules we have available. One is creating a safe holiday celebration, something like that. Decorations, it talks about lighting and things like that. So keep that in mind, but we have ways to make the holiday decorations safer. Gamers exit labor law postings. Pretty simple. We have them all listed on our website. There's no reason why they should go. They should expire. And then electrical outlet light switch that deals with people that have old switches or they're overloading the outlet. Okay, so these are again top 20 recommendations that we've made. That some of them align with those claims that we saw earlier. So accounting practices, again, we had a lower frequency of them, lower frequency of the claims and the recommendation, but there's a potential for a major loss. And there's a video. The video is on our website under risk management. This is, if you go to micatholic.org, risk management, last week's webinar is here with the slideshow. Today's will also be here. But if you scroll down a little bit, there's the video. We usually show this video during our live seminars, but for the sake of time and everything, we just show you where it's at. So michiganmicatholic.org/risk management, and you'll find it here. It's about an 18-minute video, and it talks about practice and procedures for fraud prevention, which is very good. The main concept is separation of duties. So I encourage you all to look at that video. Okay, so this is quiz part 2, but I have one more poll question for everybody. It's very important. Let's see, let's pull in. So, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate this webinar? 1 being poor, 10 being excellent. So I'll give you a minute to vote. And again, these are anonymous. You can tell us how you feel. All right, we've got a couple votes in. A whole lot of people haven't voted yet, so we're just going to wait a second. All right, some people are just being shy. That's fine. All right, so majority that voted on the 7 or 8. Oh no, there you go, 9. 9 people, really well done. Some people think it could be better. It was just okay. I understand that. We always try to be better, but this is good for us to know. And then a couple of people said excellent, but a lot of people, so good. That's good to see. I appreciate that. All right, so this does conclude part 2. Next week is part 3, where we talk about issues that we've seen that are emerging that we need to focus on. Talk about some special events issues and how to fill those out, and online resources. And as I promised, there's our phone numbers and email. Let's see. All right, just looking at some chat here, some comments. So yeah, so there's our email. Vince is the manager. I am John Greenburg. I probably failed to introduce myself earlier, but I think a lot of you know me by now. General questions can go to the risk management website or the email, and then of course our phone number is there. We are answering phone calls even now when we're working from home for another week and a half or so. I think we're back. Many of us are back on the 15th. I think we're going to stagger coming back. That's still being discussed. But again, this will be available. The first one, as you saw, is already available. This will be available, if not this afternoon, like I said, maybe tomorrow, and we'll also have the PowerPoint presentation separately. So again, you can rewatch it, share it with your staff. And I apologize, I went almost an hour here. I when I rehearse it in my head and things, it goes a lot faster. But when I realize I gotta explain things to our participants, I think it's not as fast. So I appreciate your time. Your time is very important. Glad you can join us, and I hope to see you on here, most of you, if not all of you, and more, next Wednesday, 10 o'clock. Thank you.